So now I'd like to introduce our featured presenter tonight, Alex Dragos of Blue Tomorrow. He will be reviewing findings from the Line Canyon Baseflow Investigation, which is a collaborative effort involving Surfrider, Patagonia, and Santa Barbara Channelkeeper that assessed oil production pollution in the northern Ventura coastal watersheds. Millions of barrels of produced water are injected into reservoirs beneath the watersheds above Mondos, Solimar, and Faria, which then flow into these and other treasured beaches year-round. So, Alex, thank you for presenting this evening. We're definitely looking forward to hearing the information that you found and a little bit about what you do.
Great, thank you, Laura. Having a little bit of technical difficulties here. Of course, the computer decided to update at just the right time, but got some kinks figured out for the most part. So bear with me if some of the slides aren't exactly as clear as they normally would be. But I'm going to share the screen and walk you through a short presentation about this project that we did. It was a collaborative with a Surfrider and Channelkeeper. Also, Patagonia supported this project, as well as Lush Cosmetics and the Rose Foundation. So it was a nice community-based project investigating this issue that we've been aware of for some time and we've been working on for some time here at Blue Tomorrow. So let me see if I can share my screen here and get this presentation started.
Can everybody hear Alex okay?
I had to turn my volume up, but I can hear him fine with the volume up. Okay. It was just a little quieter.
That might be my speaker. So let me see if I can crank that up a bit. One
Thank
second.
you. Great.
Let's see here.
And Alex, if you have any issues with the screen share, I have your slides on my computer. I'd be happy to put them up if we need to at some point.
Okay. Input level, let's try this. How's this? Is that better?
Much better, thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah, so let's get started here, and I could walk you through this. And is that screen share coming up?
No,
Not
I don't
yet.
see it on my side. The sound sounds better, but I don't see your slides yet.
Okay. Okay. All right.
I'm so glad this isn't me. Oh my gosh. I'd be like dying.
Oh, no sweat. We'll get it.
Okay.
I know, that's.
Oh, here we go. Yeah. Yeah. Perfect.
Okay, great. All right, so yeah, to start out, we're Blue Tomorrow Environmental Consulting Group here in Santa Barbara. We've been working in this area for the past, 7 years now, specifically looking at the Northern Ventura County coastal watersheds. So this project has been really a accumulation of work that we've done, supported by Patagonia and Surfrider and working alongside Channelkeeper. Originally, this project came out of a violation that EDC had pursued, and we investigated a little bit further. But let me get started, give you a little background information. So the study area that we're looking at here is originally started out looking at 5 watersheds on the Northern Ventura County coast that drain into Solimar and Faria and Mondos. And this area is, it bisects 2 oil fields, the Rincon Grub and San Miguelito oil fields. And if you could see here on my cursor, there's all of these little dots. These represent active and idle oil wells in this area. So they cross these watersheds, and they drain these watersheds, and you're getting a lot of stormwater that we know that drains into this area. And we've monitored this for some time. And here's a closer look. Actually, you can see a little bit higher concentration. These are the two oil fields. You have the Rincon grub, and then you have the San Miguelito. And then Ventura continues on this. This is called the Ventura anticline. So if there are any questions, feel free to interrupt too. Some of this stuff can be a little bit technical, but for the most part, I'm sure you guys are all aware of the oil activity on the coast. And yeah, so we started looking at this mainly because of the density of the oil fields, and also the stormwater pollution that we know is going on. And through this initial investigation, we found that Line Canyon, it exhibited some unusual characteristics. So these watersheds are typically intermittent or ephemeral, so they really only flow during and after rainfall events. Except Line Canyon had this perennial flow that was very unusual, at least in respect to some of the other watersheds that are in this area. Throughout the initial investigation that we did, looking at stormwater runoff, we also monitored this base flow, and we found that also it was very saline. It was reporting TDS concentrations up to 10,000 milligrams per liter, which is about an order of magnitude above what you would normally expect to see in this area. And so that really kind of raised some eyebrows. Initial investigation into the activity that was going on in this area, there is a lot of it's called water flooding. So this is an enhanced oil recovery method that is done to help extract oil in depleted oil reservoirs. It's not fracking, but it is kind of a similar process in the respect that they're trying to really get deep into the formation and collect as much oil as they can. So what produced water injections essentially do at kind of a higher level is they'll inject wastewater into the subsurface to try to flush oil into production wells. They'll extract that production fluid, then they'll separate the oil from the wastewater, and then they'll essentially more or less recycle that water down and inject it again into the subsurface. But they are doing this at an incredible amount of pressure and magnitude. We're seeing as much as almost 6 million barrels of water, of produced waters injected into these watersheds each year. So, that coupled with the unusual stream activity that we saw in Line Canyon, we started to hypothesize that there may be some interaction at play between the subsurface water injections and what we're finding in Line Canyon. So that really begged the question, well, is this something that we can document in some way? What can we do to try to figure this out, so to speak? So the objective of this project, again, with support from some of the environmental nonprofits around this area, as well as Patagonia and other foundations, we sought to evaluate the potential for the Line Canyon baseflow to be influenced in some way by oil field operations. To do this, we developed a scope, if you will, to identify first other similar perennial streams along the Southern California coast that we could compare with Line Canyon, and then also sample and analyze the water chemistry from these identified streams, and then compare results with data from produced water from the study area that we were able to get from publicly available well records from Dogger. So we could actually see some of the water chemistry that the oil companies are collecting as well. So the three sites that we settled on were Line Canyon, here, and that drains down into Mondos. As well, there's this really small drainage here that we call Mondos Creek that's also perennially flowing and very highly saline. And it's also in this kind of water flooding zone. And then Los Sauces, which is a bigger watershed to the north, but also flows year round. And so these were the three that we compared during our investigation. Here's some background on some of the sampling events. Line Canyon, we sampled a number of times back when we initially investigated this area. And then also 2019 and into 2020, a number of times Line Canyon, as well as Mondos and Los Sauces. And this was really an exploratory study. So we kind of used a little bit of a dynamic sampling scope to really pin down some of the fingerprinting that could be done from at least where we are collecting the samples, which are downstream of the oil field. So we settled on looking at inorganics and metals, trying to see if there's any fingerprinting or signatures from the different compositions of anions and cations. Also looking at some isotopes to see if we could do some sort of dating of the water to see if it's recently recharging the aquifer and it's more indicative of shallow groundwater that's you would see being recharged again just from rainfall events, or if it's much older and more kind of characteristic of being deep in the formation. And then also looking at some radioactive material that we have some data from the oil field records as well on produced water. So here are some of the results. Again, these are a little bit technical, but just you can kind of see some of the signatures here looking at, if you just pay attention to the cursor. So this is a Piper diagram. And here we have the relative concentrations of cations, the relative concentration of anions, and then this is a combination of the two. And what this does is it shows us more or less what the characteristics of this water is. And here in the legend, you could see Line Canyon, that's in this reddish orange. We have Mondos Creek in yellow. And then we have some of the produced water from San Miguelito, and then Los Sauces as well. So what we can see is that these all are kind of similar when we're looking at the produced water and we're looking at Mondos and Line Canyon here, but it is different than Los Sauces. So, these are kind of, again, just painting the picture of, well, these are probably similar, at least coming from maybe similar geologic formations or depths, and potentially coming from a very deep formation, whereas this is more kind of indicative of maybe some shallower groundwater. Here is the aging that we did, looking at the deuterium and oxygen 18 values. This is the global median water line and meteoric water line, and then this is the locally adjusted. So what this does is it shows, this is what I believe what essentially seawater is, more or less, and then it's being recharged into an aquifer, so you can see kind of where it falls. This is like essentially would be recently deposited water that you would see coming out of a stream, and then here it's getting into that date. So this is essentially present, and then this is getting further out as we go. So this, again, is more characteristic of what we would expect to see from deep formation water. And then here are some results of the radioactive material. This is naturally occurring, but we do know that there is some of this that is found in produced water. It's pretty abundant, And we did get detections in all of these streams as well. So again, kind of more characteristic of being deep formation water. And here's a map that shows the different water injections. So the bigger bubbles are the wells that are injecting more produced water. This is upwards of 1 million barrels per year. Again, this is almost 6 million barrels in this time frame that we found. And this is the Line Canyon watershed. So you can see the proximity here vis-a-vis Line Canyon. Then here's Mondos as well. So in conclusion, what we were able to find is really that we couldn't rule out that this is connected. It's very difficult to prove that it is connected, being that this is deep in the subsurface. We don't have access to the spring sources and to be able to do certain tracer tests and that sort of thing. But we do have some evidence, more or less, that there is some interaction potentially that's going on. First, the potential pathways. There are a number of different faults and fractures throughout the study area. Increased pore pressure can facilitate these fractures as well. So if you're having high concentration of injections that are going on in this area, there could be some sort of interaction that's going on, or increasing that fracturing and nexus to surface expressions. Also, again, just the sheer magnitude of produced water that's going on in this area. And then looking at the various water chemistry findings that we found. First, it's very suspicious that this base flow that we found in Line Canyon is flowing consistently at the same rate, despite long droughts and heavy rainfall events, and it's still flowing at the exact same rate. So first of all, just being under pressure, you think, okay, well, maybe there's some reason here that this is going on. And then considering that this is likely coming from similar geologic depth as produced water, and then also that that there is differences from Losausis, what we can perceive as being more shallow groundwater sources than what we're finding in Line Canyon and Mondos Creek. And just to give you an idea too, so Line Canyon we found to be total dissolved solids at about 10,000 milligrams per liter, and in Mondos Creek this is almost 3 times that. So we're seeing very saline water, very much similar to some of what we would see in produced water as well. So that's the rest of the slides here. Just like to follow up by saying that from our standpoint, we believe that this area should be monitored continually to really understand these characteristics, and if it's really kind of incumbent on some of the environmental nonprofits and watchdogs in this area to maybe approach Dogger or the Regional Water Quality Control Board or some of the agencies to make sure that they're aware of this, and that maybe if we could have access to the oil field and to do some different type of tracer testing, that we might be able to get to the bottom of this. So that's the conclusion of this presentation. And again, like to thank Surfrider and all of the groups that have helped with this project, and open the floor for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. We really appreciate the information. I know that was a lot of data, but it's fascinating how many actual oil wells are there. But I wanted to ask a question. I know Paul's got some comments, I'm positive, but I did want to ask a question. I don't remember if you said how long had Blue Tomorrow noticed or been like monitoring the fact that there is a continuous flow of water?
2013.
2013. Okay. Paul, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I'm curious. Thanks for coming tonight. We've been talking a lot about this over the years. You know, I'm often like a keeper of the phone for Surfrider. So, you know, we get phone calls from time to time, people reporting things that they've seen. And one of the things that has actually occurred, you know, often is, you know, kind of an oily sheen out in the ocean. You know, some guy calls me on his cell phone and says, yeah, he's up at the Flame. You guys know where the Flame is? I'm talking about up almost up to Rincon. There's a big flare. You know, I'm up at the Flame and there's a big plume out into the ocean. But I'm just wondering, it looks like there might be, you know, some of that processed water, and you're saying it's saline, but, you know, are there pollutants that we should be concerned about that might be in the water at Mondos?
Not that we've found. You know, there are some low-level PAHs, but not at any risk kind of levels that you should be concerned with. Not to say that's just from the base flows. Not to say that there isn't potential for, you know, other stormwater runoff to be carrying other pollutants that are then getting flushed into that area. But we did also take a look at some of the metals and in the dispersion um, in the cove there, and you know it does get swept out, and the currents do a pretty good job of pulling that out and dispersing it. So I would say that from a persistent level, that we have not found anything that would be of concern for human risk, but not to say that, you know, it's not possible.
Okay, yeah, thanks. I just, you know, I think of places like Sulphur Mountain where there's like actual oil seeps on the ground, and obviously up along the Santa Barbara coast, there's tons of those natural seeps. You know, I always thought that all of this, you know, pressurization of these formations is probably contributing to some of that. But we're not necessarily seeing, you know, that same kind of thing. We're not seeing tar on the beach at Mondos because of this, right?
Yeah, we can't really point to it being coming from the oil field.
Yeah, so there's no smoking gun, but we know something's going on when there's what was it, 9 million gallons of or barrels of,
Yeah, it's 6 million barrels. Yeah,
which is that's a lot more than 6 million gallons. How many?
yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Bill, did you want to open up the chat room questions?
Sure. The only one I see so far in the chat is just asking is Los Sauces near La Conchita, and I think it's just a little bit north of Mondos, but not quite all the way there, right, Alex?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, bit south from La Conchita.
Yep. And yeah, if anybody else has any questions, I mean, feel free to pop them in the chat or go ahead and unmute yourself if you'd like and speak up.
I've got a question. So now that you've concluded that you can't rule out the possibility of it, what's the game plan going forward? Are you guys going to continue testing on a regular basis, or has there been any big indicator that would make you test regularly, or is it more so when you notice something out of the ordinary?
Yeah, well, I think that, you know, we're just kind of working with partner organizations and trying to understand, you know, what can be done. You know, this is regulated by Dogger and to a certain extent for the surface flows, the Regional Water Quality Control Board. So it's really providing some information that can be leveraged to provide some sort of enforcement. And, you know, these are concerns, I would say, for sure. And it should be, you know, put back on the regulators to say, okay, you know, maybe this should be halted until we see if there is some interaction between what's going on at the surface and what we're seeing, you know, coming out of these watersheds. So I would say that it's an ongoing effort, collaboratively, to really, you know, try to approach the regulators and see, you know, what really should be done. we're independent scientists, and we're happy to work on these sort of projects, and we would advocate for doing some continued monitoring for sure, because I think that should be done. But at the same time, I think that next steps is really for groups like Surfriders, groups like Channelkeeper to approach these regulating agencies.
Got it. Thank you. A couple good questions come in the chat now. What's the mean injection depth versus the water table depth in that area?
That I will have to get back to you on. But it is I would say, I think it's several thousand feet deep is the injection zone.
Gotcha. And are there state or federal regulations regarding injected water quality?
I'm not up to date on the latest regulations in terms of what's being injected, except that I think produced water is looked at as being one of the more established practices. It really is the same fluid that's coming from the production zone. So by re-injecting it, you're not necessarily like putting anything back that wasn't already there. So I think that those, there aren't necessarily a tremendous amount of additives that are being used. Not to say that there aren't any, also in doing other kind of well maintenance and that sort of thing. But yeah, I think that there's no reason to think that the oil company isn't abiding by those regulations, whatever they are.
Gotcha. What's the impact of increased salinated water reaching the ocean? Are there any impacts there?
Just from the saline, from the addition of produced water, or even highly saline water into the ocean. The ocean has a higher salinity, so it doesn't really have an impact in terms of that, at least.
Gotcha. And that kind of plays into the next comment. Not to play devil's advocate, but is there really a problem regarding health of sea life or of humans there?
Well, that wasn't the objective of our study. What we were looking at was, is there a potential interaction? So we weren't really doing a toxicity assessment. We were looking at more, what are the characteristics of the base flow, and what are the characteristics of produced water, and is there some sort of interaction or some comparison that we can make to try to evaluate that interaction. So we didn't really do a risk assessment, so we can't speak to that. But from what we did test, there wasn't anything of concern. But again, that wasn't the objective.
Gotcha. Well, this actually ties into another question on there. Great. In a perfect world, are there other sources of data that could help form a more conclusive picture?
Well, I think that it would be helpful to get up to the source of the springs, so getting up onto oil field property, doing different tracer tests that the oil company does. So I think that we should be able to do a little bit more of a thorough investigation. We are constrained being below the oil field and below these sources as well. So yeah, I think that there could be more data that could be accumulated.
Okay.
Or different data. Is it within the scope of what you do in your report to offer conclusions, but then also recommendations, or is it possible, or is that not what you guys do?
No, we do. It just kind of depends on the situation. So for this particularly, we recommend first to sit down with the partner groups and have kind of a roundtable discussion about what are the next steps, and then providing the information to them so that they can use it, to approach the regulators and come up with some strategies that they could leverage to try to get some action.
Great. And there's a comment about CalGem being the successor to Dogger and having a better mission mandate. And then a question about fracking. Are there fracking sites in the area above Mondos, or is it all just this produced water injections?
Yeah, it has been fracked in the past a handful of times, but they found that it actually couldn't hold pressure because there was too much, I think, porosity and other fractures that are going on, which begs the question, well, then is, this produced water, navigating through and finding its way to the surface?
Interesting. That's all I see in the chat box. If anybody in the audience has any other questions, wants to unmute your mic, go ahead.
Yeah, Bill, the only other thing that I would add here is that, there's other impacts from the oil fields that we see. And, just having, I don't know, there's probably hundreds of miles of roads up there, and they're all dirt roads, and they're all in very loose, unconsolidated geology. It's all very highly erosive. And so you guys know, every time it rains, there's just a massive plume of sediment that comes off of that oil field down those creeks and into the ocean, which smothers the reefs offshore and makes the water yucky for us who are swimming in it. But there's just it's such a long history and so many roads and so much activity up there. We're always, suspicious of what's going on. And I think that this investigation was good to show that there probably is produced water coming up, but maybe there's other concerns that might be more pressing.
Yeah, and just to speak on that, Paul, we did investigate the metals that were being, carried out from stormwater runoff from those roads, and it's data that I'd be happy to share with you.
Right. And, I know Channelkeeper was able to get enforcement stormwater permit for runoff from the Era Energy sites along Ventura Avenue. And we were grabbing stormwater samples along there over the years. You guys have heard me talk about that. But, it's almost like stormwater might be, a bigger issue after looking at this persistent base flow, just in terms of actual pollutants.
In terms of actual pollutants, I would absolutely agree. In terms of maybe more policy, I think that it is very interesting to see, the potential interaction between the above ground and the below ground, and then what we're seeing again with the surface expressions. And, you hear all the time that, fracking or whatever is done, produced water flooding at depth that they're working in is perfectly safe, and it's not interacting with the water table, or it's not coming up to the surface. So that, I think, is why this project is particularly important, and this information should be passed on to Dogger, more from a broader policy objective.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Well, I don't think there are any more questions. Well, thank you very much, Alex. I think that was fascinating and frightening at the same time to learn all this information. So we really appreciate the work that you put into doing the testing. And Greg has a question. Bill, did you want to?
Yeah, sure. How
Last
valuable or profitable is the type of oil produced from the Ventura anticline? That is, if the U.S. collectively reduces oil dependencies, could these fields be closed?
Well, the second question, the second part of that question, I'll defer to someone else about that. In terms of value, what you could do is you could look at the number of barrels of production that's done, and multiply it by the price of oil to get some sort of value in terms of a current year, and then also looking at the at the reservoir itself and how much oil is in there. They do this sort of estimate. So I don't have that on hand, but it is something that should be easily available if you look.
Gotcha. Yeah, I just wonder if it's like nearly tapped out, or if there's more profitable areas, or there's
It's pretty tapped out. Just even the fact that they do water flooding in this area. I have some other graphs from some of our previous work, but from what I remember back in 2013, 2014, it was about 90% of the production fluid was produced water. And it's been declining.
Wow.
They've been drilling in this area for over 100 years. And, back when they were first drilling, it was majority of it, about 90% was oil. So you could just see the steady decline in the, relative composition of that production fluid in terms of, what is actually of value.
Yeah, they seem to be moving more down to the Oxnard Plain now, but that's a whole nother discussion for another time.
Now, can I just ask, are you going to be following up on this and doing more testing? I didn't quite catch if you said you were still working.
It's to be determined. This project is done, but we're happy to continue to work in the area. Just a matter of what the partner groups are interested in doing and pursuing, and how we can help.
So Alex and his partner in Blue Tomorrow were contracted to do exactly what Alex just presented. And so his portion of this, their portion of this project is completed. So now it's up to the nonprofits like Santa Barbara Channelkeeper and Surfrider to meet with Blue Tomorrow and make a decision moving forward what will be done, and based on recommendations, and is it another project that needs to be initiated, or do we go to the different agencies to report the information that we have in this report now? Right, Alex? Did I get that?
Correct.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to thank everyone. I think we're done with the questions. I think. Uh-oh. Yeah. Thank you so much, Alex, for sharing the information with us and for joining us tonight.
Absolutely.
Our year-end chapter meeting is always special, and again, recognition for everyone, all of our volunteers, all of our sponsors, our donors, our members, everyone that makes the chapter successful and what it is, 30 years strong going into 2021. You guys are the people, are the drive, the motivation, the thing that makes it happen. And we do great work here. It's an incredibly important chapter, and we've done a really tremendous job this year. And in spite of COVID, we've held our programs and campaigns together and active, and chapter meetings and everything. And I'm very proud of the work that we do. And this meeting tonight and your presentation, Alex, is just part of that. So thank you.
Thanks,
Yay.
Alex. Thanks, Laura.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Membership, don't forget, month-long membership drive. If you're not a member, please get a membership. A portion of the cost of the membership goes to directly to our chapter as a method of a fundraiser. So you've got the membership drive, you've got the merch in the marketplace, and you're going to have a special movie night on the 17th if you do become a member, or if you are a member. So stay tuned for that. And have a wonderful evening, everyone.
I had one quick thing to say,
Yep.
Which I overlooked saying when you asked me about our program. Joan Tharp is on here, and I just want to give her a really special shout out, because it was because of her that we got the Hold On to Your Butt program into Port Hueneme. So thank you, Joan.
Yay. Thanks,
Yay. Thank you, Joan.
Okay. Good night, everybody.
Good night.